Hello everybody, this is Andreas Nest, business coach. Today I'm talking to Lynn Osborne, and she operates a company called Clarity Care, and she offers independent advice for care.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Yeah, but for families that are looking for care for elderly relatives.
So thanks for seeing me.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So Lynn, tell me a bit more about your company.
Okay, well I started Clarity 9 years ago. I can't believe the time has actually gone so quickly, it's amazing.
9 years ago, why did you start your company?
Because I had been working in the care industry for probably about 25, nearly 30 years now. Scary. And I'd started...
So you were a carer, yeah?
I started my whole career as a carer, which is something I'm very passionate about. Sort of listening to people when they're sort of starting their careers and they're talking about, one of my hates is when people say, I'm only a carer, because actually the opportunities are vast for people. But throughout my whole career, and I worked my way up through to managing care services, really came across people that were struggling in the system, trying to navigate themselves through the system when they're looking for care for their elderly relatives, and even more so in the last few years as people are what we know as self-funding, having to pay for their care privately. But the families that are having to look are quite often got children themselves, they're working, so they're juggling all of that and caring for an elderly relative. And so that was why.
So this is what you realized when you were a carer?
Yes.
9 years ago?
I was carer 20 odd years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, but as my career progressed throughout that time and doing consultancy work also with local authorities and sort of just, that was something that was becoming more and more obvious that people were struggling.
So what was your last job in the care industry then before you became self-employed?
Well, I was managing care services, so I was a registered care manager for a domiciliary care agency. But I then went on to do project management for local authorities, so did consultancy work.
And that's when that dawned on you that there was a niche in the marketplace where you could step in?
Yes, very much so. And based the whole concept really on what goes on in the States, where private care management is very much a big business there.
So you saw the example in the States and you thought, we can do that here in the UK?
Very much so.
And then you started off, was it just yourself at the beginning? Or?
No, I had a business partner to start off with. So there was two of us, which was great, and that was lovely because we could bounce ideas off of each other. And we were together for about 4 years. But we started the business very small, trying to develop the concept in this country, and that was probably our biggest challenge, to be quite honest.
So what was the challenge there? Because people didn't know about this kind of concept?
Yeah. So in this country, it's very much, there was the expectation, especially sort of going back 10 years or so, very much the expectation that care is free and care just happens and it's just there on tap. And it's not. And even more so now. But I think it's just that whole concept of, obviously we have our social services who do a fabulous job. It's that whole concept that we just pick up the phone and everything gets resolved. And similar
to going to the doctors. It's all there on tap, endless.
Exactly, and it was that more of the expectation. So right in the very early days, it was trying to develop the concept, understand whether the demand was there, whether people were willing to pay for a service such as this. So that was the real challenge in the beginning. But the two of us, we sort of had one sort of thought process and then actually went off in a different direction.
So how did you overcome this challenge? What did you do?
A lot of research, talking like I say to people in the States, really. Got lucky in networking. I'd started going out networking, trying to say what it is we're trying to do. And as part of that network was introduced to a solicitor who works in the private client side of things. And they were really interested in understanding a little bit more about what we do. And that was a whole route to market that we hadn't even seen.
So you forged a strategic alliance?
Yeah, very much so. So now solicitors are our main route to market because we offer a really good beneficial sort of service for them.
So when they get looking at their clients and stuff like this, they then make a referral to you and say you should be talking to this person because they can help you with that?
Yes. So there's two sort of ways that people sort of when they suddenly find themselves in this position of having to look for care, they either have a trusted solicitor that's been a family solicitor for a long time, or they're suggested that they are recommended to go to a solicitor to talk about lasting powers of attorney and things like that and wills and that side of it. so as part of that conversation, obviously everything else comes out, how they're struggling.
Yeah.
So now that we're working with the solicitors more, it is something they can say, actually go and talk to Clarity Care, and they can support you and advise you in this.
So surely 9 years ago you must have been one of the first companies in the UK to actually offer that type of service, yeah?
Yeah, there are very few of us around.
Yeah.
There's a couple of sort of competitors around, but we all do something slightly different.
Yeah.
But it is still quite a new concept that is developing, and I think it will continue to develop.
Yeah.
Sort of going forward. Yeah.
So has been finding clients and kind of educating people about what you do been the biggest challenge, or have there been anything else that you think you found challenging?
I think from the concept of the business, I think that is, educating the marketplace is probably one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
I think from a personal view, from a business, starting up a business, it's you suddenly go from a corporate life where you have everything. You have admin assistants, you have an IT department, you have all of that. I'm sure you hear this all the time.
You just tap into them.
Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly you're everything.
You're wearing 8 different hats.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge is you have this reality that I think I can still remember it on day one after having left my job, and I hadn't planned really that far in advance. I thought, no, I've had enough of where I'm at. This is where I want to be. Yeah. But not having really any idea what I was going to do. And then suddenly on day one, it was like, okay, now what?
Now what?
It's like, it's like, whoa, okay. And it was a real fright, and I still can see that in my head.
So what would you advise, startups, what they should do on their first day? What, how do they start so they don't end up like, oh God, what's happening now?
Yeah, I think probably having a clearer idea of what it is you want to be doing. I think the challenge for me, coming back to what we've set up, is it is a new concept in the care industry and what we do. So I think that's probably the slightly different challenge. But I think it being clear on what it is you want to do.
Did you have a business plan?
Of sorts, not fully, of sorts.
Yeah.
It was up here.
In your head,
sort of. And I think this is where it was interesting working with somebody else. Because it was somebody that I'd met and I'd known, we got to know each other, trusted each other, and still do. There's no issues there. Since that point, I probably had a much clearer idea of where I want to take the business.
Where you want to take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and I'm interested to learn of how long would it actually take you from the day then you sat there going, oh hell, what's going on now, to when did you have your first paying client? How long did that take you?
Oh, well, first paying client, actually, we had probably within a couple of months.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So pretty quick.
Very quick, yeah. But then it's very sporadic.
Okay.
But I think that was because we still didn't quite know what we were doing, what we were offering. So,
I see.
Yeah. So we've been very fortunate in having very regular clients.
Yeah.
And it's built. But those, probably the first 4 years, it was sort of quieter. But at that point also, I started to do the juggling of doing some consultancy work as well.
Just to earn on the side, And okay, but then 4 years, you decided to split with your partner. Then you went on your own.
Yep.
And you said what changed was the clarity that you saw in the business, what you wanted to achieve?
Very much so, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then what happened in the next 5 years?
We've grown year on year, and I think that is.
And what is the secret to your growth then?
I think vision. I think knowing quite, even though sometimes that's the hardest bit to actually articulate, but actually being very focused on what we're delivering. So we packaged up services, and I think when it's a service industry, I think that's one of the hardest things because it can sort of vary quite dramatically. But we packaged up our services, so doing that, it became much clearer for the people that were referring to us what they're selling on for us almost.
I see.
So that became quite a big turn.
So once you got really clear of what your service offering was, you could then actually have an offer that was visible and people would actually...
And being confident in it as well. I think that's the bit for me was, because I think sometimes when we very first start out, you're a little bit hesitant about what you're trying to sell because you're coming from that comfort world. But actually now being able to stand up and be very confident in what we're selling is probably the biggest turnaround as well.
Absolutely.
And secret, I think,
Okay, being confident about what you do.
Yeah.
And what would you say has been your biggest achievement so far?
I think there's a couple of things. I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to do that.
Be cheeky.
Yeah. There's two things. I think the biggest achievement for me was taking on my first employee.
Yeah. When was that?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
We've had a change of employees now, so I've got two employees now, which is great. But I think then being approached by a company 2 years ago, who are a large private medical insurance company, and they came to us with a project to support carers in the workplace, and that was a really exciting time because they actually found us and they approached us, and we continue to work with them now as that project's gone live. So
what is it exactly you do with them?
So we provide the advice, support on social care advice, and so for mainly at people that are carers in the workplace, because that's I think something like 1 in 9 people, 1 in 9 employees sort of are a carer, and it's such an unknown. When people take time off sick, there's lots of anxiety. We don't know what those anxieties are, and more often we're finding that actually there's a caring responsibility. So it's actually it's sort of they've provided a product that supports those people, and we actually answer the questions. So people can actually have a live chat, they can have a phone call and get a consultation with us as a team, and other people within that as well. So because that was really exciting to be approached with that, and that's been really good for the business.
And you said earlier that you're really passionate about the care industry and that it's underrated in your view?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think and we all hear about money and everybody needs more money, etc. I think it's not, yes, it's lovely, we all want more money, but I think the recognition of what carers do, I think, is undervalued. It's a skilled job, and I think people don't necessarily see it as a skilled job. I remember when I very first started, it was almost seen as like pin money. It's just something you could do, it fits in with your children, and it was fine. But actually the level of skill and the trust that we're giving these people, I think is just totally underrated. And I think, and until we can find a way of boosting that, I think the industry is going to stay struggling to bring carers into the workplace.
Absolutely.
I'm very passionate about that.
Very good. So what's the next big thing for you and Clarity Care?
I really want to get out to the public more. And that's not me taking over the world of social services. No, that's not what we're doing. It's actually about supporting families that are struggling, and there are people that are just not able to know where to turn. So,
and how are you going to do that?
Well, difficult one really. But there are but I think what we're trying to do, I'm really developing with one exciting service that we're putting in place is what we call contingency planning. So I think there are so many people that are out there that are struggling. So one of the projects that we're actually producing is a contingency plan. So that brings everything into one place with all the what-if scenarios. So we might have a married couple, both caring for each other, and then what happens if one goes into hospital or one goes into care? What happens to the other person? And some of that can happen in crisis. So what I'm really trying to develop, and we've been doing it for the last couple of years, is that contingency plan, is to work with families to have everything in place. So if that scenario arises or anything like that, we can step in and support that family immediately, and that's been quite exciting to develop, and we're getting lots of good feedback from that.
Absolutely, sounds like a great plan. So, is there any upcoming events you would like to share with the audience? Anything that's
well, next year, I don't know. We're sort of we're coming into our 10th year next year,
that's
so
a big party then.
It's a big party. So we're going to try and think about things to do next year, and try and hold some events that we can actually share our experiences.
And when will that start next year?
Probably from about March onwards. Next year,
okay.
So we actually sort of registered in the December, and I decided December's not a good time to. Well, we'll have a party in December anyway, but but we will do something throughout the year.
So you move into March, the whole year will be kind of speckled with little events coming along.
Absolutely,
Excellent.
And I think aimed at carers, but also celebrating carers that are in the workplace as well.
That's good. They don't get enough recognition.
No, they really don't. So.
Great. Well, Lynn, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And
really good.
Absolutely. And for you guys out there, remember what Lynn said about confidence. Having the confidence to go out there and actually putting it together and saying, this is what we do, and this is our offer, and this is what we're proud about. So remember that, and I will speak to you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.